Those who went to private school, what was the best rich kid meltdown you witnessed? I know a guy who didn't get into a college he really wanted to go to. Instead of accepting it, his parents spent millions to pay for a wing of a new building to be built, and after that the college accepted him. He still had to pay full tuition, $60,000 per year, after that too. The lobbying to get your kid into college is more common than people think. Writing a check for a few $1,000s, or better yet, knowing some donor that writes even bigger checks and getting him to send in a letter of recommendation for your kid. This very thing happened with a family friend of ours, and his child got accepted, only to be kicked out a year later. Finally get to tell this story. My mom works at a prep school that I went to. Important to this story is the snowstorm that has been forecasted all week. As I am putting together my bag of ski stuff in her office, her richest student showed up at the door. This kid is billionaire with a B, also sobbing his freaking eyes out, like my leg is broken or his dog had just died. The problem was his dad's helicopter was grounded in NYC and not allowed to make the flight to their private jet in Teterboro, NJ. Instead, his dad would have to rent a limo to take him to a hotel in the area. This was delaying his trip to Belize or Cancun and meant he would not get to start getting wasted for another 3 hours or so, and he was just so stressed. I really do feel bad for these kids. They're going to be miserable and not understand why as an adult because their parents never taught them how to be a normal kid. I was going to a normal public high school at the time. There was this girl in a youth group I was in who put everyone else down. She would go on and on about how much her parents loved her, and how they loved her so much that she got to go to a fancy private school. She would really rub it in too. Not having a good day, grades not so good, sick day. Well, if only your parents loved you enough to send you to private school like mine do. It was annoying and hurtful to everyone. Well, one day I am walking down the hall to my next class and I see the principal introducing a new student to teacher. It was none other than this girl. Her folks must have gotten sick of her attitude, and they decided to put her back into public school for an attitude adjustment. The next few weeks were great. How much do your folks love you? That story was super satisfying. Too many of these suckers just get away with it and learn nothing. A bit of backstory. Sao Paulo has really crappy traffic and rush hour is just miserable. Hours to go a few miles. So this girl who used to be nicer when young became a total B in high school. One day, her driver picked her up in the wrong car. It wasn't the Mercedes-Benz S-Class but a more normal car. She completely ignored him. Refused to acknowledge he was there or waiting for her to get in the car. So that poor guy had to drive back to her house without her in the crappiest traffic imaginable to get the Benz. Drive back in the crappiest traffic imaginable to pick up a spoiled brat who started yelling at him for being incredibly late. And I'm 100% sure he didn't drive the Benz in the first place because her dad forbade the driver from taking it. I went to a boarding school in the late 90s and I remember a girl in my Spanish class trying, unsuccessfully, but at great length, to argue her way out of a tardy because daddy's secretary forgot to call and wake me up this morning. Good lord. Do private colleges count? If so, there was a rich girl from LA who went to my college and demanded a private apartment in one of the dorm buildings because she didn't want roommates. Shortly after, she decided she didn't want to stay in the dorms at all and had her parents rent her a house that was $7,500 a month. This was in San Francisco, so I'm pretty sure most of you can imagine how expensive things can be. Not a kid, but a parent. I went to an expensive private school on a scholarship and was friends with this girl, Samantha, whose mom had security cameras in every room of the house and would constantly spy on her. Also had monitoring programs on the computer, etc. My parents mentioned this to me once, and, being a stupid kid, I told Samantha. The mom flipped crap. I'm talking calling my parents several times a day to berate them, to the point where they had to block her number. I was never allowed over to her house again. Samantha and her friends bullied me relentlessly for the rest of the year. It was pretty traumatic, honestly. I didn't understand what was going on because I thought I was doing the right thing by telling her. I went to boarding school for 2 years. I was on scholarship. Most of the other girls were trust fund babies. They'd go skiing in Europe every week, They'd go on shopping sprees at the mall and make room in their closets by throwing out brand new, still with tags, outfits. I didn't have money to go shopping, but I loved those days because I could pick through the new clothes in the trash cans and find beautiful things for me and my sister. One day, one of the snottiness rich girls found me looking through the garbage and said some horrible things about how I was a trash picker, poor, and other stuff I've blocked out. I hid from classes for 2 days because I was so embarrassed. A few months later, I was in the study hall late at night. Going back through the hallways to my room, I heard her sobbing in the hall. I almost walked right by, but I felt really bad for her. I stopped to ask her what was wrong, and she blurted out that her parents were divorcing. Then she realized who I was and started getting bitchy. I gave her some Kleenex from my bag and told her I was so sorry that was happening to her. Then I walked away. She wasn't super nice to me ever, but I think she got a bit nicer after that, especially when her buddies weren't around. That's some good high roading. I probably would have said something about it being her fault on account of neither of her parents wanting to be responsible for raising such an awful person. I went to an all-women's private college. My second year roommate was a disaster. Screamed on the phone as loud as possible with her parents if they didn't send her $5,000 a week. She wanted a new snowboard and had spent her $5,000 on going out and God knows what. She had a total meltdown in the hallway of the dorm screaming that her parents really didn't care about her. I can't impress upon you how loud she was screaming. I was like, if I could get $50 a month I was thrilled, but my parents never sent me money ever. Kid in my school who got a Jeep for his birthday and complained for ages. The next year his parents got him a boat. Apparently he didn't like the shape of the interior. The brat couldn't even sail. It was basically like a floating RV that stayed at the marina and never went anywhere. The next year he got a helicopter which, surprise surprise, he didn't like for some BS reason. Our running joke that his parents were always buying him modes of transportation so that he'd leave home and they wouldn't have to listen to his whining. Not exactly a meltdown but a behavior issue. This kid was the senator's son and in my history class behind me, he always acted entitled and the teacher even praised his father like he's God. We get our test grades back and he happens to see I got a really good grade. For some reason as we were passing our tests up the rows for the teacher to recollect, he says, "Pick these up by yourself, nerd," and throws them all across the floor in front of me. This was high school. I hadn't even witnessed such cheap butt way of bullying since elementary school. My mum was an English teacher at a private school that I also went to, but her stories always seemed to be more intense than mine. Once she was teaching a particularly badly behaved class, trying to get them to shut up and do the assigned work. This one stubborn kid decided that the best response was to say, "Why should I have to listen to you? My parents pay your salary." She flipped the frick out and that kid barely spoke for the rest of the year. My wife taught at a private school, too, and was basically told that she could not give one of the kids the F he deserved because his parents were important for the school. This isn't from me. I went to a private school but the kids there were reasonably well adjusted, if a little out of touch, but my mum, teacher at a private school, prepare yourself for the wall. So for this kid's 18th birthday he gets this sweet ass red Porsche, which he drives to school. He doesn't need to drive it to school, because he lives literally 30 seconds walk away on the estate where the houses start at about £3 million. But he does because he is a douche. Because this beautiful car must not be forced to mingle with the commoner cars of the other 6th form students, he is given permission to park it in the staff car park, which is still commoner cars but on a secured lot. Around a week on, he's showing off to his friends by dicking around in his car in the staff car park, and slams the passenger side of his car into the back of a staff car. The staff car is an old farmer mobile Jeep from the 90s, so it is not in the least disturbed or dented from having a sports car wrapped around it. No one was in the passenger side, and the driver was fine, but the car itself looked like a really expensive boomerang. Of course, kids start screaming and crying and complaining, threatening all sorts of legal action. My mum was his head of year at the time, so he comes running to her demanding something be done, but she does everything but outright laugh in his face and tells him alas and alack, he's on his own. The next day, my mum comes into work and some very irate and powerful parents are waiting in her office. demanding to know why the school wasn't doing anything about the fact a staff member had crashed into their son's car, and threatening to press criminal charges if the school didn't pay up. Kid's there with a crap-eating grin on his face. But this isn't my mother's first rodeo. Oh no, she's prepared. Oh, well that's not what. Teacher who owned car said what happened. Let's review the CCTV, shall we? Obviously the kid is now bricking it, and the parents agree to watch it, knowing they will be vindicated. Of course, it shows the kid donutting around in his car before smashing into the Jeep. The parents slowly turn to the kid. The kid starts ranting and raving. Honest to God, full breakdown. My mum was worried an ambulance would have to be called to commit this child. Eventually the parents agreed to pay for any damages to the staff car. The kid got a new car, but it was something like a third-hand Ford Ka, and he wasn't allowed to drive it to school anymore. Got even better when, the next year, his bro came into the 6th form and got a sweet ride, and he told my mum that original douche had been banned from driving it, as well as the parents' new cars, when he had crashed his Ka. Wow, rich reasonable parents, that's doubly rare. I went to private school for a few years, but it wasn't an ultra-rich wealth one. One of my classmates' name was Murray Patrick. We all just called him Murray because double first names are goofy. He didn't care. Murray was chill and a good guy. On an open house night we met Murray's parents. They thought they were upper class, New York aristocrats. They were dressed like they were out for a night at the opera. I called after my buddy Murray. Hey Murray. I was scolded by his mom immediately. His name is Murray Patrick. Don't call him Murray. That isn't his name. Young man. She snapped at me. She then stormed off indignantly, like a cartoon of an offended rich person. Murray was mortified by his mom. For context, this private school was in the suburbs of Canada, in a rented space above a community services building. It was an alternative school, not an exclusive private school. At that point, I wouldn't have taken the P and started calling him Muser. I go to a normal school, but this one made me laugh. In year 9, 13/14, we had a ski trip to Italy, which was dang cool. This mega rich stupid girl who sees Kim Kardashian as a role model because she gets expensive things had a meltdown so bad we could hear her wailing from the other end of town, so we went over to see the commotion. We see this girl sitting on the floor covered in tears and expensive Gucci handbags and scarves, etc. She's crying because she spent the 2,000 euros she came here with and can't afford the 800 euro Gucci purse in the window of this shop. She got on the phone back home and explained the situation to her mother, who apologized profusely and sent her another 3,000 to her bank account so she can buy more Italian brands. I'm fairly sure she still ran out. This year in year 13, 17/18, we're having a prom so we can all get ludicrously wasted, organized by students. She managed to get on the prom committee and threw a fit so large that we could hear it the other side of the school building. Upon asking the other members, we found out the screaming was because the prom wouldn't be fancy dress. The rest of the school agreed that fancy dress was a stupid idea, but yet the complaining continues. She's not too bad anymore though, because she's the only super rich person at my school, so her friends rein her in a bit when she's being ridiculous. Thank God. I briefly attended a private school for about 3 years. A girl that had been going there since kindergarten received a low grade on a Spanish test and went off on the teacher about it. She got her parents involved in everything and ended up transferring schools because the teacher wouldn't adjust her grade. I went to a normal high school, but I remember there was a rich girl that lost her crap one day because one of her nails broke on her manicured hand, and she called her mom to come get her so she could get it fixed immediately. The school was okay with it because they didn't want to hear her freaking whining about it anymore. It wasn't a private school, rather a public school in a very wealthy town. We really did have the best if everything at my school. My family is fairly wealthy. Some of the kids I grew up with were heirs to vast fortunes, insurance, DuPont, sports empires, etc. I was sitting in the lobby at my high school. This girl had just gotten the ultra exclusive Dolce & Gabbana Motorola Razr. She was going on and on about how exclusive it was. This other girl rounds the corner and was like, OMG, I just got the same phone. The first girl looked like she was going to choke her out. She got the girl to hand her phone and said, poor girls like you don't deserve fashion accessories like this, and snapped her phone in half. The other girl took it unbelievably well. I actually became friends with her after that. Turns out that she was not poor at all. Mother was one of the heirs to the Sears fortune, and her father was a bigwig at Motorola. Best part is that she got her father to give her 50 of these stupid gold DNG phones and handed them out a few days later to a bunch of kids at school. I still have mine somewhere in the box. I appreciated the gift, but never used it. My sister cried as she got a laptop for Christmas. For the previous year she wanted a laptop, but for this she only wanted clothes. It was made better when my mum opened a I love my rotten and grateful children fridge magnet after my sister went upstairs. Currently in a very wealthy private school in Manhattan. Many are wealthy, and many aren't who are on financial aid, but culture in the school is to be pretty humble about wealth. A girl that actually just moved here was telling me about her $50 million trust fund and her daddy's private plane. She picks up her phone and I see a text from her mom. I look over and see what appears to be a long apology from her mom about something. I ask her what she's apologizing for. The girl explains that she went ape on her parents the night earlier for making her fly first class commercial, but she was the one receiving the apology. I don't think I managed to stifle my laughing. I used to work at a private alternative school for at-risk youth in the Northeast. Parents sent their kids there from all over the world and paid about $80K for their entitled kids to go there. Biggest meltdown I ever saw was from a kid who lived in my dorm. We had a status system, so those on the lowest status couldn't have their personal electronics from the time they turned them in the previous night until about 6 PM the next day. This kid notoriously skipped class to play WoW all day long and simply refused to turn his electronics into me. His advisor finally convinced him that turning in his electronics was a better idea than not doing it, so he turned them into me. The kid came to me asking for his electronics a few hours too early and I said no. Since this kid was 18, he threatened to drop out and literally walk home. This was the middle of nowhere NH and this kid lived in VT about an hour or two away. I stood my ground and still said no, so he ran downstairs to his room to pack his things. I called the admin on duty. He came and determined it was a situation for the headmaster to get involved in. He also came and the kid threw enough of a hissy fit that they both came to me asking for the electronics. I handed them over and the kid calmed down, but it didn't end there. He decided he needed revenge. So one night he and another student decided that they would spray my car with a fire extinguisher. The only reason I know it was him was because my advisee managed to get a video of it. The guy who was the head of the dorm next to mine was a volunteer firefighter. So he said to me the next morning, "Hey man, it looks like your car got sprayed with a fire extinguisher." I didn't think anything of it, but he continued with, "That stuff will melt your paint off your car and etch your windows. You need to go wash it now." So I booked it to the nearest car wash and spent about $100 to save my paint. Luckily, the school reimbursed me and charged the families of the two kids for the costs of the wash. You have been visited by the extremely rare green beanie Sarah meme. Like this video in the next 7 seconds and you will be blessed with non-itchy beanie head this winter. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.